All right, let's see how this goes. Thanks so much for having me. My name's Kylie Roberts-Frost. I am the CEO of the Bedding Stewardship Council, and my background, I've been running the scheme for about 18 months. Prior to that, I was running an Indigenous-led mattress recycling facility. I was running the ACT operations for Soft Landing. And prior to that, I worked for 20 years in logistics. So in every presentation I do, you will hear me talk about logistics because I think it's such a key part of the challenges we have in Australia, and nowhere is that more true than in remote Australia. So with that out of the way, today I'd really just like to tell you a story on a project that's really important to my team and I, and how we became focused on the very unique challenges in this part of Australia. This partnership that we have is with Tanya Egerton, who is the founder of Circular Nation and the Remote Op Shop project. Some of you may be familiar with that, but Tanya can explain the wonderful work that she does and the context of the Remote Op Shop far better than I can. So what I'm going to do is play a video for you guys.
Living in rural Australia is really about a connection to people and place. My name is Tanya Egerton and I live in Katherine, Northern Territory with my husband Quentin and our 2 dogs. I was living and working in Katherine as an Indigenous business facilitator in 2016 when a group of women from the remote community of Jutmingan called me saying we're being forced to participate in a Work for the Dole program. They were turning up for 25 hours a week, otherwise their payment would be cut, and they were given nothing to do. The women said, look, we are creative women, we love to paint, we love to sew, we love to weave, and we want to start our own art centre, but we want to self-fund the art centre. We went out and sat with them and started looking at all the different opportunities for them to self-fund the art centre, and an op shop emerged as a potential opportunity. So we ended up putting a call out on Facebook looking for a couple of boxes of clothing to get started, and we ended up with 30,000 people sharing that post within a couple of days. We had 35 drop-off locations across the country. We had volunteers picking and packing boxes, and in the end we had 700 boxes of clothing turn up to Katherine on 2 trucks. The women were absolutely astounded by the support, and within 3 months they'd sold $10,000 worth of clothing. They'd formally incorporated their art centre, and they bought all their own art supplies. The Remote Op Shop project is a network of op shops in remote First Nations communities. The op shops foster empowerment and self-determination and do 3 important things. They provide access to basic necessities such as clothing and household goods. They provide business training and enterprise learning opportunities, and they operate as a social enterprise, so the funds are pooled and then distributed to cultural projects within the community. For some of our more long-term communities, we've now developed a containerised op shop model. This serves as a model that can be replicated in other communities. It's more than just a retail space. It's a place for community to come and meet and to celebrate life and culture. Currently, we have a donor pool of around 35,000 people, and we have around 20 remote op shops. And that model has worked really well. But not a day goes by when I don't get a call from a woman in a community wanting to start this for her community. In order to be able to create efficiencies, in order to be able to get high quality stock, we're now engaging the fashion and textile industry to say, rather than sending your excess goods to landfill, you can be increasing your social impact by enabling communities to start their own enterprise. And what I've seen on the Facebook group is the women who are running the op shop posting messages saying how proud they feel about delivering this service to their community, about enabling their community to have access to clothing and household goods, as well as some of these women being cultural leaders, so they're able to use the funds to take young people out on country and pass on traditional knowledge. Very few things in remote communities are truly owned and led by the community. The Remote Op Shop project ensures that these op shops are owned and led by the women who run the op shop. We don't hold the keys. They can open and close it. They determine the money story. We're just there as an enabler to support them. I think coming in as a non-Indigenous woman and working in the Indigenous space, you have to come in here with a learner's mindset. You have to realise that you're stepping into someone else's culture. And so you have to be patient. And spending 10 years in a remote community is really just the starting point.
Tanya and the women of Yurupanga approached the scheme. They were having problems with mattresses in their community. They reached out to us thinking that potentially we could help. And next thing we know, in May last year, I travelled to Yurupanga, which is about 700 kilometres from Darwin, with Tanya and Quentin from the Remote Op Shop project, and Tanil Lavender, an Indigenous health researcher from New South Wales, who you'll hear from later on. When we were out there, what struck me was not so much that it was very remote, which it was, and it was very hot, which it was, or even the informal landfill at the end of town. It was seeing the mattresses themselves in use, realising what they had access to and what they could get up there, and none of those things were fit for purpose. It's seeing what they're sleeping on, and in many cases not sleeping on at all. That trip really embedded for the scheme what we think stewardship and EPR mean, and it truly is a basic human right for all in our communities to have an appropriate bed for a good night's sleep. But what does that have to do with product stewardship? And don't we just collect stuff and maybe we recycle it? We believe really strongly, and you can see that in the way we structure our scheme. Stewardship shouldn't begin at the end. We need to begin at design. And we think about every part of the product's life, especially in communities where logistics and conditions challenge traditional thinking. You can't have stewardship as an afterthought. And I thought Suzanne in her talk yesterday spoke really clearly about that, and as did Tony. Stewardship has to be a system, it needs a framework, and that system starts at design and it ends with recovery that works in the real world, not just on a piece of paper. I think it's a key responsibility for producers and retailers to ensure that the products they create are fit for purpose in the communities in which they are sold. And that includes not just Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, it includes everywhere from Coogee to Kununurra and everywhere in between. And it was through that lens that we decided, well, we're a voluntary scheme, we can't give rebates, we can't pay for recycling, but we could maybe fix this. I think the biggest thing when we're talking about waste in remote communities and how it differs to, waste in the Southern Highlands where I'm from. Waste in remote communities doesn't start at the end of a useful life. It starts far earlier than that when a product fails. A mattress that costs $1,000 to deliver doesn't last one wet season. That failure has health consequences, especially for children. If you were sleeping on something that holds moisture, that can't be cleaned, that attracts pests, you are not uncomfortable, you are exposed. I'll touch on this more later with a video and some audio from Tanil, but I want to say at this point that rheumatic heart disease is one of the leading causes of early death in our remote communities, and a leading cause of the repeated infections that lead to rheumatic heart fever come from scabies and mites found in bedding. So this is a real health challenge, and it was through that lens that we started to talk to the community. We went up, we sat with the elders at Yurupanga, we had a yarning circle, and we came to the conclusion that yes, there was a waste problem in the town in recycling that needed to be dealt with, but what really needed to be looked at was a mattress that was fit for purpose in their communities. So we decided as a scheme with Tanya and the community that we would design a mattress from the inside out. The whole point of this is that it must be durable, it must be washable, and it must have a clear path for end-of-life recovery. If it can't last or it can't be cleaned, it shouldn't be in any of these homes. So we're in the very, very early stages of this, but there's a few key elements that we're looking at. Tracy, our Innovation Director, is the technical person, so I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of this. We're working with Swinburne University on something called SwinCell, which is basically a mould-resistant, washable, recyclable inner to replace the traditional springs and foam. Another thing that we're looking at, and we're taking a bit of inspiration from the outdoor hiking community here, is using a wool layer instead of the traditional quilting. Wool has a lot of antimicrobial, fire retardancy, it's natural. And there's a really interesting project that we're hoping to align with in Victoria, and it's about, meat sheep, like sheep that we eat. So the wool on those sheep is often sent to landfill. Now, it's not merino wool, you're not going to make a cashmere a scarf out of it, but it could work really, really well as a quilted layer in mattresses like this, and it's a really good reuse story. The other element that we really have to consider is the barrier cover. There needs to be one. We need to figure out what that looks like and what that works in community. So this is all a very long-term view, but while we're trying to design the perfect product, people are still sleeping on the floor. So we're just distributing existing mattresses now, not because they're perfect, because they aren't, but because they're better than what they have available today. And every bed and mattress that we can get into community gives us the data that we need to help design what's going to work for them. Our goal for this year is to get 5,000 beds into remote Northern Territory and Queensland communities. We're doing that with a little bit of help from our members. So the first beds to go up, over 100 of these beds have made it into Europunga so far, and we have gathered a lot of the feedback through those Facebook groups. The women talk on there about their feedback on the beds, whether they like them, what they don't like. So the first lot that went up was a very simple steel base from one of our members, Zenas, and we're trialling a foam-based mattress with a washable cover that came from Vendella. Word of these beds has travelled all over. The Circular Nation team were at a gathering at the Job Expo in Fitzroy Crossing a few weeks ago in northwest WA. And everyone was asking them, hey, those beds that you've got in Europunga, how can we get some? Can we get them over here for our mob? So a big part of what we have to do is how do we now do this? How do we scale this? Another really interesting trial that we've had initially, some of you may have seen this, the circular bed was launched last year. This is a very simple bed base made from 100% recycled PET. It is very light, cleanable, hygienic, will make it through a wet season, easy to move around. It flat packs though. So we got it up to Darwin, but we were concerned about them being put together on community. So they put them together in Darwin and then sent them down. Unfortunately, that didn't work for transport. So we're back to the drawing boards with these, but this is why we do trials. We need to find out what works and what doesn't work. So I'm looking forward to seeing the next iteration of this. This is not a top-down solution. This is not us telling them this is what it should be. We're working alongside Tanya and her team, and we're working with community members who bring their lived experience into the design process. So it's not our manufacturers starting with a drawing board, it's starting with people telling us what they need, and that feedback and conditions is what's going to make this work. It's co-design, we're not dropping it in. But of course, the really big challenge is obviously logistics. So to make circularity real in remote areas, we need infrastructure, but we don't need mega facilities. We need to look at networks and hubs. The remote op shops are the network that we're looking to use. That is how we can get in and get access to those communities, and they act as a hub within their own community. We've had a bit of success in that we now have a little bit of a mattress hub in Darwin. Remote op shop and Circular Nation have secured a warehouse facility, and City of Darwin is about to start mattress recycling. So by combining those things there, it gives us that next connection. This is not just about recycling, and product stewardship is not just about recycling, it's about systems that work. We've got industry to the table helping design solutions for these communities, and I think it's scalable and it's replicable across other geographies and other waste streams. For any waste stream where design is failing remote communities. I think that there's a huge potential for collaboration, because what's true for me, it's true for textiles, it's true for a whole lot of other things. And if we do this together, I think we'll have far more success than just doing it alone. Just to go back to one of the really, really key things, and this is more than waste, bad bedding creates health issues, and better products available in communities can stop that cycle. It's not hypothetical. We've been through the stats before. Those are mattresses that were in use on the community I visited. So this is something that we can do better at. I could tell you a little bit about the trip and the health aspects, but I'd really like you to hear from Tennille Lavender. I think she describes it perfectly, and you will get to see through this video some of the very first mattresses being delivered into the families.
Yama. My name's Tennille, and I'm a Mankata, Yuin and Aralin woman from the south coast of New South Wales. I'm also an academic who lectures in Indigenous health at the University of New South Wales, the Australian National University and Macquarie University. I am a PhD candidate at the University of New South Wales and a published poet. I live with my beautiful young boys on Biripi country. I was invited by Kylie, Tanya and the community to visit Yurupanga and experience firsthand some of the issues the community faces around safe sleeping. We know that sleep hygiene has a connection to rheumatic heart fever risk. Rheumatic heart fever is usually contracted in adolescence from a simple strep infection. Many of the beautiful children I had the pleasure of spending time with had runny noses. As a mum and a health professional, this broke my heart, given the high likelihood in a few years that this would eventually morph into rheumatic heart disease. When a basic infection is left, and again, the telltale signs are a runny nose, you think about how many of our children run around in winter with constant runny noses, especially if they attend daycare. The basic infection sits dormant and over time damages the child's heart valves until the onset of puberty, where it rears its ugly head and can lead to heart failure if left, and of course death. Australia and the Northern Territory have the highest incidence of rheumatic heart fever in the world. This is a national disgrace. Our kids deserve better. On arrival to Yurupanga, I was shocked at the lack of basic services that the community faces through no fault of their own. Access to clean water, garbage disposal, and electricity are all services that we take for granted, yet many of the Aboriginal communities don't have access to these. At Yurupanga, I was honoured to meet a local health worker in training, but shocked to find out that there were no basic medical facilities for him to practice from, let alone any specialist services around healthcare. The sheer overwhelm in those first few days was a struggle. I've spent many years lecturing young doctors about rheumatic heart fever with clear prevention strategies, yet they can't be applied due to the lack of basic needs such as clean bedding. As health professionals, we all know that a good night's sleep on bedding which is hygienic and fit for purpose is a building block for good health. However, I was moved by the connection to culture, the strength of family and kin, and the resilience and drive that the community and their elders demonstrated in their quest to improve their lives and the opportunities of their beloved children. As an Aboriginal woman and a researcher, I know that the solutions to many of the problems presented here today are already known to the community. Our job is not problem solvers. Our job is knowledge and access immobilizers. Successful initiatives fail if they're not led by community, and that is why I believe that this program is successful, even in its infancy, because it is led and supported by the community. Our next stage is to gather research and feedback on the mattresses, as well as train a local researcher to do the work on the ground when we're not there. This is in line with the community's goals of self-determination and will provide an ongoing employment and skill development for a community member. Thank you for your time today, and I hope that our presentation gives you something to think about.
I think that this work is very much about dignity, equity and access. if we fix design, we fix so much more than product performance or landfill capacity. We're helping to fix those systems and frameworks. On that, I would just say again, thank you for walking this journey with us, with Tennille, Tanya and I and my team. This project's really important to us, and I can only finish by saying again that circular solutions start at design and they do not stop at disposal. And I really believe that we can build systems and frameworks to support that through product stewardship schemes. And if you would like any more information or you have any questions on this project, please reach out. We would love to chat with you about it.